Welcome to Craft Powerful Communications. This is a professional development workshop hosted by Everywhere She Maps of Youth Mappers. A quick look at our agenda. We're going to start with some introductions. We'll talk about LinkedIn, how to maximize the benefits of the platform in your job search or generally your professional development. We're going to talk about crafting professional emails that are persuasive and powerful. And then we'll do some question and answer. Although please feel free to write questions in the chat throughout the session or to unmute yourself and ask those questions as well. So I'd love to hear from each of you a little bit more about yourselves. In the chat, if you could please type your name, your university and Youth Mappers chapter and the country where you are, that would be amazing. We may also have some of the hot data quality interns with us, so feel free to put that instead of your Youth Mappers chapter. As I said, my name is Courtney Clark. I'm the program director for Everywhere She Maps in Youth Mappers. I am based in the US. A little bit about my background. I served in the Peace Corps in Guinea, West Africa for 2 years. And then right after that, I started becoming involved in humanitarian mapping. I have a master's of business administration, and I was recently elected to the board of the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. So really excited to hear more about you all in the chat as well. To kick us off, I want you to just reflect on, actually, I have one question on the screen, but two questions for you. One, do you have a LinkedIn profile? That should be easy, yes or no. But I want you to also reflect on, do you think you're truly getting the most out of LinkedIn? The answer is probably no. I don't know that anyone is really getting the most out of LinkedIn because it's an extremely powerful platform with lots of features. But I know myself, and I'm sure many of you, could be getting more out of the platform. So let's kind of jump into how we do that. So first, I just want to review, why are we even talking about LinkedIn in the first place? Why is it something that's important in your job search? So a few statistics to kick us off. Over 9 million companies use LinkedIn to list their job postings and to search for employees. There are over 10 million active job postings on LinkedIn. 92% of recruiters use LinkedIn to search for candidates. And employers are much less likely to hire candidates they can't find online. So I want you to think about, what will a potential employer find when they search for you online? LinkedIn has a lot of benefits. It will help you manage your professional brand online, build your network, connect with other students, recent graduates, and professionals, find and apply for jobs, and access thinking from thought leaders in your field. And I should have mentioned earlier, these slides have a lot of text. I've kind of broken the rules of PowerPoint by adding so much text. That's because I know some of our Youth Mappers students, English is not their first language, and they're more comfortable perhaps reading English and find that easier to understand. And so that's the reason for all the text on the slides. It's also so these slides can serve as a resource and a reference for you after the session, because I will be sharing them with you. Okay, so first, building and managing your personal brand. By using LinkedIn, you'll be able to really control and customize how others can view your professional experience and your qualifications. And while you're having a personal brand, you want to make sure it's still authentic to you. Think about what makes you stand out from others, but also make sure the content you're putting on LinkedIn really does align with your values and your purpose and your passion. So before you really get started on the process of either creating a LinkedIn profile or enhancing your LinkedIn profile, I want you to think about, who are you really? Not just your name, but who are you? What do you stand for? What do you want to be known for professionally? And then separately, what sets you apart from peers in the industry? Okay, so those are two really important reflection questions that I want you to be thinking about on your own over the next few days or weeks as you're working on your LinkedIn profile. It's also, of course, an amazing way to network. So you're going to have lots of opportunities on LinkedIn to connect with professionals. So you can add lots of people you know from all different spheres of your life. Just a few quick tips on connecting with people. You can definitely include a custom message when you send an invitation to connect. I would definitely recommend doing that if it's someone you don't know or you don't know very well. You can also, of course, include a note when it's someone you do know really well. And just a few thoughts on if you're trying to connect with someone you've never met before, you really want to be strategic about it, because if you just send an invitation to connect with no context, they're probably going to reject it. And so maybe you will pair it with a request for an informational interview. Maybe you can say you are a student in that person's field and you just want to connect with them to learn more about their career path and see what kind of content they're posting. If they have published anything recently or given a video presentation or even an in-person presentation that you were able to see, you can talk about that and how it affected you. Or obviously, another great element about LinkedIn is you can see if that person is connected to anyone in your current LinkedIn network. And so you can always ask someone to introduce you if it's kind of a 2 degrees of separation. It's also an amazing platform for connecting with alumni from your university. Alumni are going to be one of your top resources for informational interviews and networking. Think about yourself. You probably, once you graduate university, or if you already have, would be much more likely to respond positively to a message on LinkedIn from someone who attends your former university. And it's also a great way to look up alumni who have studied the same topics that you have or pursued a similar career path, and really see what they did after graduation. What were the choices that they made, and what were the jobs that they chose. So just an easy way to find alumni on LinkedIn from your current university. If you go to your LinkedIn homepage and click on the My Network tab, there'll be a drop-down menu and you want to click Find Alumni. You can go ahead and filter and search by where the alumni of your university or universities live, where they work, what they do. And then another great way, usually a lot of universities or even your specific academic departments will have alumni groups on LinkedIn. So make sure you're joining those as well. LinkedIn is also amazing for conducting company and job research. So as I said, millions and millions of companies are online. Many of them have pages with lots of really rich information about themselves and content from their leaders. So I encourage you to review the pages of your targeted or your dream employers. You can find out who works there, job openings, statistics of the company. And once you find out who works there, you can look at their profiles, study people who have the job that you want, and try to get a better sense of how they arrived at that job. Does everyone who has that job have a certain credential or certain experience that you think you might need as well? And then, of course, before any job interview, I always recommend review the profiles of whoever will be conducting the interview. You may find out you have something really great in common. Maybe you volunteered for the same organization. Maybe they went to the same school as you, and you can bring that up and form a nice connection with the person interviewing you. So as I mentioned, LinkedIn is great for finding job openings. And sorry about that. So the really great thing about LinkedIn is it will send you job alerts that you're able to set up. So you can have LinkedIn email you or send you a notification whenever there's a new job posting based on the criteria that you establish. So that could be the job title, location, there are other criteria you can add. And so I have instructions here for how you will do that. I won't go through them right now, but they're there for your reference after the session when I share this. Okay, so now that we've gone over just a few of the amazing things you can do with LinkedIn, I want to talk more about creating and enhancing your profile. So of course, one of the first things anyone's going to see about you on LinkedIn is your profile photo. This doesn't have to be a professional headshot, although if you do have one, I would use that. You can take this with a smartphone or a digital camera. Make sure that someone else is taking it. We don't want any selfies as our profile photos. And just generally keep it professional. You know, make sure it includes only you, has a nice neutral background, is recent, and feel free to smile, you know, and show your enthusiasm and your excitement through your photo. Another tip, most people don't customize their cover photo on LinkedIn. This is separate from your profile. It sits behind, kind of like a Facebook cover photo. And I love customizing this to really reflect your professional interests or your personal brand. For example, mine is, I believe right now it's a screenshot of OpenStreetMap of Salem, Massachusetts, which has a special place in my heart because it's kind of a town that's known for feminism and women's empowerment in the US. Plus, I work and live and breathe OpenStreetMap. So I combined those two and made that my cover photo. All right. LinkedIn will give you a default headline based on your job title, or if you're a student, your headline will probably be something like student at XYZ University. This is fine, but I recommend rewriting or adding to it to really promote your expertise and your interest. So aside from your profile photo, your headline is one of the first things that people will read. But it's really a chance to tell people who you are and what you do. Okay, but you want to keep it concise, make it catchy, informative. So I have a few examples of a generic title that LinkedIn might give you, and then my thoughts on how it could be potentially improved. So first example, the default might be geography student at National University. A way you could make this more interesting and tell people more about you very quickly would be to say something like aspiring GIS analyst, experience with GIS, remote sensing, and cartography, geography major graduating in 2021. Instantly, I know so much more about this person and what they're looking for. If I'm a recruiter looking for a GIS analyst, ding, 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 here I found someone who is immediately of interest to me. Another generic title, recent graduate looking for a job in digital marketing. You could really beef this up by saying something like digital marketer, passionate about helping small businesses with audience-centered strategy. All right, I know I've been going very quickly. There's a lot of content to get through. I just want to pause for a minute and check in if there are any questions. Again, please put those in the chat. I'm also going to close the poll so we don't have that going anymore. Thank you so much for participating. Okay, cool. Sounds like no questions so far. Let's keep going. All right. The next thing you're going to do for your profile, maybe you've done this already, maybe you haven't, is adding to your about section. This is where you're going to write a summary of yourself, your passions, your experience. You know, obviously it's at the top of your profile. And if anyone's going to read something about you on your profile, it's probably going to be the about section. And the content in your summary also shows up in results when recruiters search for candidates. So you want to be really strategic about the language that you're using. Use keywords that are commonly used in your industry. Use the job titles that you would love to achieve or to have. Okay, so Make sure you're using important keywords for the job or the industry. You're going to do this in a maximum of about 1 to 2 short paragraphs. Remember, you want people to read it. It's not your autobiography. And a good way to think about this, if you're having trouble getting started, if you had 30 seconds to introduce yourself to a top leader in your field, what would you say to them? Think about that answer, and that can be a really good starting point for your summary. A few additional tips for this section because it's so important. I really want to take some time on it. Start with a catchy opening statement. Again, you want people to read this, so somehow grab their attention, make it interesting. Although you also want to make sure it's professional. I highly recommend avoiding humor unless you know it's like truly funny and it's appropriate and it's relevant to your field. Again, you want to use keywords to optimize recruiters' search results. There's an algorithm behind LinkedIn, just like there is with every social media platform. You want to show off your accomplishments and really tell the story of your career thus far. Add some context to what you have listed in your experience section. You can, really keep it readable. Again, short paragraphs, even bullet points can be okay. And then include a call to action at the end. Do you want the person reading it to request to connect with you? Do you want them to send you a message, ask a question, all of the above? Include something that you want someone to do once they read your summary. All right, next you're going to demonstrate your experience. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is the part of LinkedIn that's most similar to your resume or your CV. So you're going to be adding all of your relevant education and work experiences. Just a few things I want to highlight. Make sure you're detailing your accomplishments under your experience rather than just listing the responsibilities that you had in a particular job or volunteer position. Another awesome thing about LinkedIn that you don't get in a traditional resume or CV is you can use multimedia. So you can upload media samples to show off, for example, your work portfolio. So I have in my featured section a few blog posts that I've had published, a video of the speech that I gave at the White House attached as well. And so you can include all of these maps that you've made, slide decks that are uploaded to SlideShare is how LinkedIn best works with slide decks. And then there's lots of other sections that you can add licenses and certifications, volunteer experience, your languages that you speak, different honors and awards. Now, if you have really substantial volunteer experience, you can definitely put that under the higher experience section rather than the volunteer section, which is pretty low at the bottom of your profile. So, for example, I did some substantial pro bono work for a large NGO last year. And while it wasn't paid, I was doing nearly full-time work for them and just doing probably a lot more than just a standard volunteer would be doing. So I put that in my experience section. It's also highly relevant to my career rather than kind of having it buried in my volunteer section. Another really powerful element of LinkedIn is you can ask for and provide recommendations. These are really key to showing your credibility and that you have a positive professional reputation. So LinkedIn has a feature that you can just click a button and ask someone else on LinkedIn to provide you a recommendation. Do not start with this option. Probably the other person won't see it. And if they do see that request, they're probably going to ignore it because they haven't heard anything else from you otherwise. They might think you hit the button on accident, or they might be kind of annoyed that you didn't ask their permission first. So before you do that, you're going to reach out to the person that you want a recommendation from. Could be your professor, advisor, a colleague, a peer, and ask them for that recommendation by like email, phone, or in person. You want to explain to them why you picked them. Give them opportunity to decline. Don't make them feel obligated to do this. And make sure you're also sending, this goes for any person you're asking for any reference. Always send them your current resume and a brief summary of what you worked on together or what you accomplished when you were working for that person. People are busy. Our memories are not that great. So it's nice to really refresh their memories. So when they're writing that recommendation, they can have some detailed things to point to. And then also offer to provide a recommendation for them if it's appropriate, or provide recommendations for other people in your professional life. People can see how many recommendations you've given and how many you've received. I always like to have that number higher for how many I've given, you know, because it shows that you're a giver and you're a team player and you're someone who cares about others, and you're not just getting recommendations for yourself, but you're also giving back. I talked a little bit already about groups. I talked about alumni groups, but I want to just generally speak to groups. So outside of alumni groups, there are so many industry-specific groups, identity groups, like for women in technology, women in geography. So these are virtual places on LinkedIn that professionals who are in the same industry or have similar interests can connect, share resources or job openings with each other, ask questions, and just generally make content. So you can search in that amazing search bar of LinkedIn, join groups that are relevant to you, and make sure you're engaging with other group members. You know, like and comment on their articles and posts, share content of your own as well. These are really good ways you can start to establish yourself as an expert within the group. I have instructions here on 2 different ways you can find groups and join them. Again, I'll leave this to review after the session. And finally, just, you know, be a really active user on LinkedIn. Ways, like I said, LinkedIn has an algorithm, just like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and ways that you can favorably work with the algorithm. You know, you want to be engaged. You want to be liking and commenting on posts and announcements from members of your network. Write original content. Don't just be sharing links to other people's content all the time. Write your own content. And then share announcements. You know, people on LinkedIn who are in your network, they care about you. They want to know what's going on with you. So talk about new roles, or if you have an upcoming speaking engagement, if you've published something or you're working on a new project, make those announcements on LinkedIn and let people know what's going on in your life. All right, next we're going to jump into professional and persuasive email writing. We have had a few new people join us. Thank you so much. So good to see you. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Would love to know who you are, where you're coming from, if you're part of a Youth Mappers chapter, what chapter you're in, just to get to know everyone better. So thank you. And also for our new people, just a reminder, put your questions please in the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your questions that way. All right, so we're switching gears from LinkedIn to email. Why are we focusing on email? Well, it really is still the main format for professional written communications. There are so many new platforms, newish kind of. Actually, the Slack has been around for a while now, but Slack, WhatsApp, Telegram, these are important. They're probably going to be ways that you can communicate with your colleagues or your peers, but they're less formal. Many students are a lot more comfortable with these platforms than they are with email. So that's why I'm focusing on email today. Got just a glossary of terms. You know, many students ask us to go over this. I'm not going to read each definition to you separately, but this is here for your reference if you're ever confused, because there is some weird lingo and jargon that comes from the world of email. All right, so let's go through the steps of how to write a professional email. You want to pay attention to the subject line. Make sure you are expressing the purpose of the email very simply. Make it specific and make it brief. Make sure you're turning on your automatic reply option if you're not going to be able to access your email because of an emergency or you're on vacation or something. Write a nice greeting, something very simple like dear, good morning, or hello. If you're writing to someone whose name you don't know, you can use a simple phrase like to whom it may concern or dear sir / madam. All right, so a little bit more detail on addressing people properly in email, although this applies in other spaces as well. So if it's a very formal email to someone like a public official or a senior executive or just someone you don't know already, please use their title and their last name. Just to start, if they want you to switch to just using their first name, they'll let you know. Okay, so you can use the titles of Miss, Mr., Doctor, or Professor. Those are the 4 you can use unless you know absolutely that they prefer to be called Mrs. We never want to assume anything about a woman's marital status or her preferences. For example, I'm married, but I kept my own last name and I did not go by Mrs. at all, and I never will. I prefer Miss. So really avoid that unless the person has told you they prefer to be called that. Of course, if it's someone you know, or you're really an established working professional and they're at a similar level as you just say hi and their first name. And just generally, there may be different norms for your specific industry or field or the country you're working in. So just make sure you're aware of those practices and following them as well. All right, the body of the email, you want to keep really clear and concise. Make sure you're communicating effectively. Include requests, calls to action, and deadlines that are important. Make them really clear and easy to find. Sometimes in an email with a lot of content, I will bold or underline those important pieces so people know what to look for. You want to use just a simple font, a normal size for reading, use a black font color. This is not a place to be creative in our graphic design skills. All right, so when you're attaching files, make sure if the file is completed and you don't want anyone to edit it, that you're sending it in a PDF. If you are sending it to be edited, obviously you want to attach it in its original form, like a Microsoft Word document or an Excel sheet. If the file is posted online where you're using links from the web, you can just add those links exactly into the email. And then for anything that you have attached or linked to, make sure you're explaining what it is so the person knows what they're looking at. All right, then you're going to close with a really nice ending. I like to write something at the end of my emails, something like, I look forward to your thoughts, or please let me know if you have any questions. Just leaves the door open for further conversation. Add something lovely like a thank you, best, cheers, whatever is comfortable and normal to you. And then after you receive their response, obviously, if you need to reply with more content, you would do that. Or if you don't need to send anything additionally, make sure you still thank them for their reply so they know that you received their email. All right, custom signatures. So I do really encourage you to set up a signature in your email that can be the default whenever you send something. It helps save you time, makes it really easy for the person who's receiving your email to see your contact information. I know some people sometimes include quotes. I really don't recommend that unless it's a quote that's really comes from your organization, for example. And don't include any images or graphics other than your organization's logo. That's okay to include. We have a template example here for you that you're able to use if you want. So for a full-time university student, this is the template that I would recommend. Of course, feel free to customize or make it your own. Once again, I'll send these slides and follow-up so you can view everything. If you're a working professional looking for a job, the signature is a little bit simpler. And then for students who also work, maybe you have a part-time job or an internship, this is what I would recommend for that template. All right, moving on, a few more tips about emails, and then we'll be done. We got through so much today. Want to talk a little bit about the difference between CC and BCC. So these stand for carbon copy and blind carbon copy. This language stems back from the day when paper and pen was, the most common way that people were sending messages. And there were actually like certain forms of paper that when you wrote on them, there would be 2 or 3 sheets below that would also capture that information. And those were called the carbon copies. So that's where that language comes from, if you're curious. When you're using these, make sure you use them wisely. You want to send the right information to the right people. Don't bother people who don't necessarily need to be involved in the conversation. So use the CC option wisely. If you're sending an email to a large group of people, definitely use BCC. That's what I used, for example, to send you the Zoom link for the session today. It just helps respect people's privacy and make sure that you're not sharing their email with a big group of people. Don't forward viral messages, of course, I'm sure we all know this. And then before you're sending, just make sure you're rereading your message and checking for grammar issues or misspellings. Okay, so there are some times when email is not appropriate to use, and I want to go over those right now. First, if your message is really long and complicated, if it needs some additional discussion, it's probably better to have that conversation face-to-face over a video chat or over the phone. You can use email to schedule the meeting that you're going to discuss the message or ask for feedback. But if your email is getting to be more than 3 paragraphs, it's probably better just to do a phone call. If you're sending really highly confidential information or attachments, be very careful. Email is not secure for confidential information. It's never private. People can forward emails without your permission. It happens. So a lot of organizations, especially if you're working for a company, could probably offer a secure encrypted system. It's similar to email, but it's much more secure. Your university might even have this as an option if you need it. Also, if your message is highly emotional, if it's kind of negative or could easily be misunderstood, once again, I really don't recommend putting any of that in an email. It's a great way to hurt a relationship that you have with someone. Just pick up the phone or go see that person in real life and have those conversations rather than doing it over email. Okay, so we've got an activity. We're going to review 2 example emails, and then as a group, we're going to brainstorm how these people could have improved their message before they hit send. Okay, so first example, the situation is a Youth Mapper student is submitting an application on behalf of his chapter for a fieldwork grant to an international NGO. The recipient, it's just a generic email address like info@ngo.org, and he doesn't know the name of the recipient. So for the subject, he wrote our fieldwork application. And in the email, he wrote, "Hi, here's the application for the fieldwork grant. We really hope we receive the funding. Thanks, Sam." So let's take about a minute. I will mute myself. I want you to read this over again and reflect on, think about how you would improve this email. All right, so we're starting to get some replies in the chat. Thank you. Kobe says that the name Sam was not aligned with thanks. Yes, that's true. That's a good call. Den says that it's missing a salutation. Yes, I would agree. And Abdul Latif also agrees. Instead of just saying hi, you can use dear sir / madam. It might be more proper. Den also says in the chat, it's too short, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Yes, I agree. The information is straightforward, but there could be a little bit more added in, especially since you're asking this NGO to give you funding for a project. You can add the last name of the person being addressed. Remember though, in this example, we don't know the person's name. So going back to Abdul Latif's comment, you could just say, dear sir or madam, or to whom it may concern. Exactly. It doesn't have a signature. So they don't have Sam's phone number if they need to reach him to ask a question about the application. Any other feedback for this email? You can unmute yourself if that's easier than putting in the chat as well. Lydia makes a really great point. The subject should be used to inform better about the request. So the subject line could be more specific or give more detail about what's happening in the email, and the signature is missing. Yes, I agree. The subject should be related to the organization and the request for the funding. Okay, so I'll just give an example of how I would have done this differently. Again, everyone has their own style, so don't feel like this is the only right answer. I'm sure there are many great ways this email could be written, but this is how I would write it. So I would change the subject, like everyone said, to be more specific. Health clinics fieldwork grant application dash, and then I put the name of my Youth Mappers chapter. In this hypothetical scenario, we wrote, for the greeting, like you all suggested, dear sir or madam, or to whom it may concern. And then take a minute to actually introduce yourself. This person probably has no idea who you are. So you could say, like, my name is Sam Kamara, and I serve as president of the Ndala Freetown Youth Mappers chapter at Ndala University, Freetown campus in Sierra Leone. On behalf of the chapter, I'm pleased to submit our application for the Health Clinics Fieldwork Grant Program attached. So he references his attachment, explains what that attachment is. We're excited for this opportunity to expand geographic knowledge of health clinic locations in Freetown in collaboration with our country's Ministry of Health and Doctors Without Borders. Thank you for your consideration of our application. Please let me know if you have questions or would like additional information. Sincerely, or thank you, and then Sam's full name, and he would have an email signature. So you really, this person is reviewing your application for funding. You want to grab their attention, make them really excited to open that attachment and see what's inside your application. Give them a brief overview of what they will be looking at. Another quick example, we just have about 12 minutes left. So in this situation, we have a recent university graduate. She's replying to an email that let her know she didn't receive a job that she interviewed for. So the recipient is the hiring manager, and this person conducted the final job interview. So she's replying. So the subject says reply, update on the analyst's position. And we don't need to do anything of the subject here since it's replying to someone else's email. She wrote, hello, Swati. Thanks for letting me know about the job. I'm really bummed that you didn't pick me. I think I would have been great. Let me know if you ever have an opening in the future. Maya. Okay, so let's take another minute. Start writing in the chat or unmute yourself at about 9:20, what you would do differently in this email. Or in about a minute, sorry, 9:20, that's where I am. That's my time where I am, but whatever your time zone is. All right, we're starting to get some feedback in. Den mentioned there's no closing statement. Agreed. Definitely we would want to include a thank you or something like that. Kobe mentioned bummed is too informal of a word. I agree with that as well. And overall, the reply doesn't really send a good message about the applicant's attitude or perspective towards the rejection. Yes, I would totally agree with that. Den thinks she's too demanding. And Laura saying, I think I would have been great. Sounds a bit odd. Yes, I would agree with all of this feedback. Okay, so this is how I would have written this email. Hello, Swati, or you could also use the person's last name, like Miss Patel, dear Miss Patel. Thank you so much for informing me of your decision regarding the analyst position and for taking the time to speak with me last week. While I am disappointed that I was not chosen for this particular position, and it is okay to say that you're disappointed, that shows that you really did care about the position. It's a good thing to show to that hiring manager. So while I'm disappointed that I was not chosen for this particular position, I remain excited about Mapping Corporation's innovative work and leadership, and I will continue to apply for future opportunities as appropriate. Please let me know if there's anything I can do in the future to be helpful to you. Sincerely, or thank you, or all my best, Maya. And she would also have an email signature. So this takes the rejection with much more grace than the previous email. You're still thanking Swati for the time that she took to interview you, for giving you the information about the hiring decision. Some organizations don't even contact people to say they weren't hired. So you really do want to thank her for doing that. She didn't have to. Again, you can express your disappointment, do so gracefully. You can tell the person you're still really excited about the organization. You're going to keep looking for opportunities there. And then they probably will never take you up on this, but it's really nice just to offer if you can do anything for them in the future. They won't ask you for anything. Maybe they will, who knows? But it's just a really nice touch that I like to add to my emails in this kind of situation. All right, so I know we went through a ton of content. Just a reminder, you'll have these slides in follow-up. You'll have my email address for questions. But in our last 6 minutes together, does anyone have questions they'd like to address right now? While you're thinking about that, I'm going to share a link to an evaluation form. It will just take you a few quick minutes to fill out, but it's really, really helpful for us as we evaluate these sessions and think about how to improve them in the future, because we'll be holding similar sessions into the future. Another reason to fill out the evaluation form, if you attend 3 of the sessions in our professional development series, and I know some of you here have already attended a few of our sessions, we have many more to come. If you attend 3 at least and fill out the evaluations for them and include your email address, you have to do that. I will offer you a personalized resume review at the end of the sessions. So in January or February.